I'd like to start this sermon out in the obvious place, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So, Ferris Bueller was a senior in high school and was experiencing some senioritis. I have a senior in high school. I know what that looks like up close. And he decided he wanted a day off. And so he convinced his parents that he was sick, could not possibly go to school. Parents say, okay. Parents leave. As soon as the parents leave, Ferris is out the door. And he's off to collect his best friend Cameron and his girlfriend Sloane, and they go off and have a rip-roaring day in the city of Chicago. And one of the places that their travels take them is to Chez Louis, this very fancy restaurant with white linen tablecloths out, and they're just dressed as teenagers. They don't look like they belong in this very fancy restaurant. They also don't have a reservation, but Ferris looks at the reservation book, realizes he is a party of three, and that someone named Abe Froman has made reservations for a party of three. So when the maitre d' comes along, he says, Abe Froman, party of three, and the maitre d' says, you're Abe Froman? He says, yes, very confidently. The Abe Froman? And he says, yes. And the maitre d' says, the Sausage King of Chicago? I am so glad that someone knew that. The Sausage King of Chicago? And Ferris goes, yep, I guess I am. And they end up, some hijinks ensue, and they end up convincing the maitre d' that he is, in fact, the Sausage King of Chicago. They take their seat. They have a lovely lunch. They eat pancreas. I can't get my high school senior to eat her vegetables, but they have pancreas. And then it's time to go off into the city again. And so they walk out of the doors of this restaurant to catch a cab. And who is right in front of them but Ferris's dad? Ferris's dad thinks Ferris is home in bed, sick. And so Sloane and Cameron say, the jig's up. We're going to get caught. That's it. And Ferris says, no, we're not. And Ferris puts on a hat, and they all put on their sunglasses, and they make their way past Dad without catching his eye, and they slink into a cab, and off they go. They end up going to Wrigley Field, they end up going to the Art Institute of Chicago, and then they end up in another cab, and their cab pulls up to a stop sign, and another cab pulls up beside them, and who's in the cab right next to them? But Dad again. And so Cameron and Ferris have to slink down underneath the window line so that Dad can't see in. There's this gag throughout the movie of we got to keep Ferris away from his dad and the high school principal. And it's funny because of the increasingly ridiculous ways that they almost cross paths. But it's also funny because we've all been there. We have all tried to avoid people, right? People that we would just rather not talk to and rather not see, and maybe because there's something that they're going to bring up that we don't want to hear about, and maybe because they're going to talk to us for 25 minutes. But we've all been in the grocery store and almost started down an aisle and said, oh, nope, not doing that. When Jesus was crucified, his disciples and Peter would have been utterly devastated. Their emotions would have been great, but they would not have been complex emotions. They were profoundly sad, and they are frightened. When Jesus rises from the dead, their emotions turn more complex. We see them in the gospel lessons. We see them not believing that Jesus, the spoken word that Jesus has risen from the dead. Then when Jesus comes and stands in front of them, they don't believe it's him. They think it's a ghost. when it finally sinks in that Jesus has walked out of the grave, there would have been joy. I think there also would have been some vindication. These people had left everything. They left their jobs, they left their family, they left their hometowns, their friends, everything to go and follow Jesus. And when Jesus is crucified, I think there would have been a sense like, oh, did I make a mistake? Should I have not given up everything for this thing that is now over? But then when he rises from the dead, there would have been vindication that they had hitched themselves to the right wagon. Jesus lives. So there would have been excitement and vindication and all of that. But Peter would have had some extra thoughts and feelings going on, because the last thing that Peter did before Jesus went to the cross, the last thing Peter did for him was deny knowing him. Jesus had been arrested, his trial had begun, and people had gathered in an outer courtyard. There was a charcoal fire there. It was cold, it was night, and so they're warming themselves by the fire. And someone recognizes Peter and says, you were with that Jesus that just got arrested, right? And Peter says, no. And someone else says, yes, I saw you with him. You were with Jesus. I don't know who you're talking about. Someone else says, yes, you're a Galilean just like him. No, I don't know him. And then the rooster crowed. Just like Jesus said it would. Just like Jesus said that Peter would deny him 3 times. Just like Peter said he absolutely would not deny him. And so when Jesus rises from the dead, I think there would have been a part of Peter that would have said, oh no. Because he has to face Jesus, whom he has so disappointed. So Easter morning, Jesus appears in the upper room, speaks with his disciples, and Jesus doesn't bring it up. And then a week later, Jesus comes into the upper room and he speaks with his disciples, and again, he doesn't bring it up. Even the person who is most conflict avoidant knows it is just better to get it over with, isn't it? And so Peter has to still suffer through this. Like when is Jesus going to bring it up? When is it going to happen? And here's where I kind of imagine Jesus like Ferris Bueller. If he had it, he would have put a hat on. If he had them, he would have put sunglasses on, and just trying to not make eye contact with him, right? Stepping to the back of the group, always laughing a little too hard at the jokes, always trying to put the focus on something else so that it doesn't come on him. And then they meet Jesus in the morning after a fruitless night of fishing. And there is Jesus standing on the beach waiting for them. And he's cooked them breakfast. And he bids them to come. And so they go and they eat breakfast. This time passes. Can't you just imagine Peter's heart just pounding in his chest? And then Jesus says to Peter, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, of course I love you. It's an easy one. Easy question to answer. And then Jesus says again, Peter, do you love me? Yes, I love you, Lord. And then again, do you love me? Jesus asks Peter 3 times, do you love me? To mirror the 3 times that Jesus denied knowing him. Did you notice the little detail in the gospel lesson as it was read a few moments ago, that Jesus cooked their breakfast on a charcoal fire? When was the last time Peter was by a charcoal fire? Well, it was the night that he denied knowing him. This is the moment when Jesus confronts Peter. And I have to imagine that this moment had played through Peter's head, that he had sort of gamed it out, and the things that Jesus might have said, like, why did you do this to me? After all I did for you, why did you turn your back on me? Why did you disappoint me? If you're not for me, you're against me. I need people who are fully 100% committed, and if you're not 100% committed, you need to get out of here. All the things that Jesus could have said. He doesn't say any of them. He says, do you love me? I see in this moment redemption. Peter is confronted, but he is confronted in the most gentle way possible. At the end of their conversation, Jesus renews his call to Peter that he made at the beginning of his ministry, follow me. As if to say, I'm not done with you yet. I think Peter might have thought that Jesus had been done with him. But he wasn't. Because this is an encounter of redemption. And it's an encounter of redemption for Peter, but it is also an encounter for any of us who have also disappointed Jesus in our lives this month, this week, already this morning. This is one of these moments that reminds us that no matter what we have done, there is never anything that will make Jesus turn his back on us. Years ago in my first parish, it was a small congregation, and most of the leadership roles had been held by the same people for decades, including the lay assistants. And the vestry and I had a conversation about let's bring some new blood in, some new people into some of these ministries. And so I was asked to go and speak to Bob. And Bob is a coal miner, a big guy. I mean, he just looks strong as an ox. He's got these huge calloused hands, and coal dust is under every one of his fingernails and ground into every one of the creases of his hands. And I went to talk with him and said, Bob, we'd like to ask you to consider reading in church and perhaps serving communion. And he said, Rick, I can't do that. You don't know what I've done. And I said to him, Bob, you're right, I don't know. And you're scaring me a little bit because you're a big guy, and I want to know who's buried in that coal mine. But what I got to say to him was, it doesn't matter what you have done. There is always redemption. But of course, that's not all that Jesus says to Peter, for after each time Peter says, yes, Lord, I love you. Yes, Lord, I love you. Jesus says, feed my lambs. Tend my sheep. Feed my lambs. As if to say, I don't want you just to tell me that you love me. I want you to show me that you love me. If I told my wife, Karen, I loved her, but she couldn't point to a single thing that I've done to show her that love recently, I'm in trouble. If I tell my kids I love them, but they can't point to something that I've done for them that has shown them that I love them, I'm in big trouble. The same is true with our relationship with Jesus. We say that we love him by showing up at 9:15 on Sunday morning. But then we have to show him. And that's why verses like this, scenes like this, are why over the last 2,000 years of Christian history, through all of the troubles that the church has had and all of the dark ages, over the last 2,000 years, the church has been an incredible force for good. Because day after day and generation after generation, Jesus' followers, disciples, and friends have gotten up and fed his lambs and tended his sheep. And for the last 300 years, God's people have been doing that right here at St. David's. And we will continue doing that, yes? One last thing. Jesus says, "Tend my lambs, feed my sheep." And immediately we might say, yes, we're the ones that are supposed to feed. We're the ones that are supposed to tend. We are the ones that are supposed to serve. And we are. But who are Jesus' lambs? Who are Jesus' sheep? Aren't we Jesus' lambs and sheep? Aren't we his flock? And so sometimes when we have our act together, when we have the gumption, when we have the resources and the time and the ability, that is when we are to feed and to tend and to serve. But there are other times in every one of our lives where we don't have that gumption and we feel lost and at the end of our rope and don't know how we're going to get up tomorrow. And in those moments, we are the sheep. We are the lambs who get tended. We are the lambs and the sheep who are on Jesus' mind when he bids these words to Peter. It does not matter who you are. It does not matter what you have done. It does not matter what rung you occupy on the social strata, whether you are on the very bottom or whether you happen to be the Sausage King of Chicago. There is always redemption and forgiveness and grace and love. Amen.